Hi, it's Nikki here from Happy Hormones for Life, and today I'm talking about hot flushes or hot flashes wherever you come from, and night sweats. How to stop them in their tracks. They are a really common symptom of perimenopause and menopause, and sometimes postmenopause as well. And it's happening because of the fluctuating levels of estrogen and progesterone in the brain, which are thought to have a role in thermoregulation. So that's your temperature control. Now, for some people, it's manageable. They just come very infrequently. Other people, it's pretty debilitating, and they can be happening every 15 or 20 minutes. Um, and then they can happen during the night as well, which we call night sweats, and they can absolutely drench you in sweat, obviously, and wake you up. And the worst thing about them is they're going to upset your sleep, which is much needed at this time too. So there are some ways we can deal with it. There are some common triggers that you need to be aware of that you can then start to minimize if this is happening to you. So what are common triggers? Things like your diet. This is things like alcohol, unfortunately, is a main trigger for hot flushes. You might have noticed that when you have a drink, you might get one. Or caffeine, or actually just drinking a hot drink, that can bring one up as well. Spicy foods is another one, and also food sensitivity. So if you're sensitive to something like gluten or dairy or soy or corn or eggs or anything like that, if you've got a sensitivity, it can cause it's a stress on the body, and cortisol can then cause a hot flush or trigger one. The next one, let me talk about stress as a trigger actually, because this is a key one. So if you have a stressful experience or an event, it can trigger a hot flush, and you might have noticed that the more sort of anxious you get, then a flush comes around, and I've seen it happen a few times. It's not just external stress though that you want to be looking at. Obviously external stress, things like your workload or your circumstances or your kids or your relationships or whatever, that's obviously having an impact on your cortisol levels, but it's also your internal stresses on the body. So things like blood sugar imbalance, so that's where your diet comes in, or dehydration, you're making sure you're hydrated, that's a stress on the body, or digestive issues, or infections, or nutrient deficiencies. All these things can increase cortisol, and then cortisol is the thing that can trigger your hot flush. The next trigger is smoking, a really common one for hot flushes. So that's something that many people have really struggled to give up. But if it's causing hot flushes as well as all the other health issues, then that's something else to another reason to try and cut down or give up. The next trigger is chemicals, actually, or toxins in the environment. They can be triggers too for hot flushes. So you want to be looking at minimizing exposure to things like that. And then medications too have been shown to interrupt your temperature regulation, things like antidepressants, hormone treatments, and others as well. So these are some of the common triggers that you need to be looking out for. So when we're coping with hot flushes and night sweats, the first thing we want to do is look at those triggers and try and minimize them where possible and try and avoid them. So writing a diary or a journal can really help to see, where you can identify some of these patterns and then try and avoid those triggers that apply to you, because not all the triggers are going to apply to you. You're going to have your own personal ones. The next thing to do when you're coping with to stop these hot flushes and night sweats is to regulate your diet. Really, really important. So we want to be incorporating lots of these plant estrogens, phytoestrogens, because they're going to help regulate those estrogen levels and stop those wild swings. The biggest source of phytoestrogens is soy, but you want to make sure that you're eating organic soy, unsweetened, unprocessed where possible. And then the other biggest source is flax seeds or linseed, sometimes they're called that as well. So if you can get those two in your diet, make sure you're eating lots of healthy fats as well, because when we're low in fats, hormones aren't getting the essential raw materials that they need, and they want to be working quite well, obviously, to help balance out these flushes. The next thing we want to be doing is looking at our stress. Now, I talk about this in every single video, but it's so important to manage your stress levels. So obviously we can't get rid of all stress, especially internal ones, but we can really start to look at where that stress might be coming from. And then, because cortisol is such a big trigger for these hot flushes, we want to really balance that cortisol. So lots and lots of relaxation, lots of self-care, mindfulness, walks in nature, Epsom salt baths, reading, hobbies, whatever it is you do, dancing, listening to music, whatever it is that you do to relax, and making sure that you're prioritizing that every single day. That is going to help reduce anxiety, reduce that cortisol, and then minimize those triggers if stress is a trigger for your hot flushes. Sleep is really, really important too, because lack of sleep is a major stress on the body, and that's not going to be helpful either. And of course, with the night sweats, it's going to be a little bit of a vicious cycle. So getting some naps in during the day, if that really helps you catch up, having a good lie-in at the weekend, really just getting caught up with your sleep wherever you possibly can is really going to help. And just go look at my sleep tips as well, making sure you've got your sleep routine and your hygiene and your bedtime routine all sorted as well. And some key supplements there are really helpful for your sleep too, which I'll come to. Minimising your exposure to chemicals and toxins, really important. Again, this is sort of an unknown trigger. You might not even be aware of it, but things like pesticides on your food, plastics, synthetic fragrances in the air, these can all be triggers for cortisol release, and that's going to then have an impact on a hot flush or night sweat. So making sure you're minimising your exposure to those things. Regulating your body temperature physically, so wearing layers where you can, carrying a small fan with you, making sure you're near a window or ventilation, and using natural fabrics for your clothes and bedding. There's so many companies out there that do lovely clothes that wick away sweat and all of that kind of stuff, and bedding as well, and that can really help to kind of minimise any discomfort. And then of course, one of the most effective remedies for hot flushes is actually HRT, body identical, of course. We're looking at the natural forms of your hormones, estrogen and progesterone, and getting those back in a balanced way and a ratio that works. So that can then really help with the thermoregulation side in the brain. Again, HRT isn't for everybody, but it is definitely one of the strategies to think about when you're looking at pretty severe hot flushes and night sweats as well, and especially if they're interrupting and your day. But if you can't take HRT, there are supplements that can really help. So make sure you're taking the basics, my recommended top 5 for your nutrients, to make sure you're not nutrient deficient, which is again a stress on the body. And then if you're not taking HRT, you might want to try a formula like the Feel menopause supplement that I've just finished collaborating with Feel, the supplement company, because I've put in some really powerful botanicals. I've got B vitamins in there as well, and some isoflavones that can really help to target the common symptoms of menopause, particularly the hot flushes and night sweats, and that they come from red clover, which is a really nice plant-based phytoestrogen. Lastly, hormone testing can absolutely help if your symptoms are persisting. You want to find out where your hormones are at. We can then work out how to really personalize your protocol and get you on the right nutrients and the right diet and the right lifestyle tips. We do hormone testing on a regular basis, helps us to get to the root cause of what might be going on for you, which hormones are out of balance. So if you'd like to know more about that, do get in touch, message me, and we can send you some more information. Hope that's been helpful today. Hope you're well and stay safe, and I'll see you next time.